There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we gotta get the right people on the bus. I've gotta fill my team, I gotta get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people, it's the leadership. So why is it that when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out? We do not practice empathy. What does empathy look like? Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been down for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? Is being concerned about the human being, not just their output. And we have to practice empathy. And one of the groups that we are pretty bad at practicing empathy with is our young millennials. How do we practice empathy with someone we don't understand? How do we practice empathy with an organization or a group that we're struggling with? Too many millennials have grown up subject to what has been described as a failed parenting strategy. Too many of them were told as they were growing up that they were special, that they can have whatever they want just because they want it. They got medals for coming in last. They got participation medals, right? And the science on this is already good. We know that it devalues the feeling that somebody who works hard and comes in first place, and it actually makes the person who comes in last embarrassed because they know they don't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse. It actually doesn't help. Then those kids graduate and they start a job. And in an instant, they find out that they're not special, that you don't get anything just because you want it. You get nothing for coming in last, and your parents cannot help you get a promotion. And in an instant, their entire self-image is completely shattered. In an instant, the way they view themselves has completely changed, turned on its head. And so what you find is that there's an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. Remember, they have grown up in an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat world in which they're very, very good at putting filters on everything. They're very, very good at curating how they want to be seen. And we think they're full of confidence. They seem to have all the answers. They seem to be telling us what to do. At the end of the day, it's just not there. It's just not true. It's just not true. Their confidence is a lot weaker than before. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know where they're going. They're unsure of themselves, and they lack the courage to ask. Then we add in technology. There's a chemical in our body called dopamine. Dopamine is responsible for the feelings we get when we find something we're looking for or we accomplish something we set out to accomplish. You know that great feeling you get when you cross something off your to-do list, or when you win the game, when you hit the target, right? Win the client, get the promotion, whatever it is. That elation comes from a chemical in our body called dopamine, right? Now, other substances, other things that release dopamine include alcohol, nicotine, gambling. That's what makes us feel good when we engage with those things, and it's the root of a lot of addiction. Now, we also know that dopamine is released with cell phones and social media. So that bing, buzz, flash, and beep that we get from our phones that feels so good, it releases dopamine. We like getting it. Yes, we all hate all the emails, but we love the bing, right? We've all been in this position. You're feeling a little bit down, you're feeling a little bit sorry, maybe feeling a little bit sad. And so what do? We send out 10 texts to 10 friends. Hi, 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 hi. And we hope that they write back because it feels good, right? So now we have a young generation with basically unfettered access to social media and cell phones. We have age restrictions on alcohol, we have age restrictions on smoking, and we have age restrictions on gambling. We have no age restrictions on this other dopamine-producing device called social media or cell phones. It's the equivalent of throwing open the liquor cabinet and telling our young adolescents, I know this is a stressful time, try the vodka, it'll get you through these hard times. That's basically what we're doing. And so what's happening is it's becoming hardwired, where our young generation isn't learning the coping skills and coping mechanisms to turn to another human being when they're struggling or stressed. They're turning to social media or their cell phones. Their self-worth sometimes becomes wrapped up in how many likes they get. They obsessively check how many likes, and actually will get depressed if they don't get any. You see them going out with their friends, and instead of connecting with their friends, they will simply sit and talk on the phone. We go out for dinner or lunch with our family and our friends. We have meetings, and we put the phone on the table, which sends a subconscious message to everybody else in the room that this is not that important to me. You're not that important to me. And by the way, putting your phone upside down is not more polite. Put it away, keep it away, because what it does is it actually hurts our ability to relate to each other. Now you look at young kids these days, they're on them all the time. I don't blame them, it is addiction, right? So you take an insecure generation that now, through no fault of their own, struggles to cope with stress. They don't know how to cope with and deal with stress, and as they have told me, many of them will admit that they struggle to form deep, meaningful relationships. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial, right? That their friends they know would cancel on them if they get a better plan, that they wouldn't really know who to talk to if they get depressed. And maybe they'll turn to an online support group, which is not a real thing. It's not human, right? And we've seen the impact of this. We're starting to see rises of depression in this generation. We're starting to see a rise of suicide in this generation. We're starting to see a rise of accidental deaths due to drug overdose from this generation. Universities are currently dealing with an epidemic that they've never dealt with before, which is the number of kids requesting leaves of absence due to depression, right? Now, those are all extreme examples. The less extreme and more likely example is that someone will go through life just never really finding joy or fulfillment. And everything's just fine. How's your job? It's fine. How are your friends? They're fine. But no joy, because you just cannot, because joy, fulfillment comes from this. It comes from human interaction. We are social animals and we need it. And we have to learn to rely on our friends. And that skill is desperately lacking. So you add in the next one, impatience. This generation is often accused of being entitled. And if you've worked with any of them before, sure seems that way. But I would argue that we're misreading the tea leaves. They're not entitled, they're impatient. Again, let's practice empathy. How did they grow up? They grew up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it shows up the next day. You want to watch a movie, you don't check movie times, you just log on and download it whenever you want to watch it. Stream it, right? You want to watch a TV show, you don't wait week to week to week. You just binge watch for the weekend. In fact, if you want to get hold of somebody, you don't leave a message on their machine and wait 4 hours for them to get the message and call you back. You just text them and they'll call you, they'll get back to you literally instantaneously. They have falsely applied the instant gratification model to life fulfillment and career fulfillment. They want it all instantaneously. The problem is life, relationships, career are not destinations like, look, I found the job I love. That's not how it works. It's not a scavenger hunt. I'm looking for the job that will, no, it doesn't work that way. It's a journey. It's the same with love. It's like, I found love. No, you didn't. You work hard every single day to stay in love. Yes, we all want to make an impact. What kind of impact? What do you want to do? How do you want to contribute to the world? This is what vision is. This is what why is. It's become generic and abstract. But the problem is they're wafting around. They're looking for the right, they'll go from job to job to job, hoping that the next one sticks. They go from relationship to relationship, hoping that the next one is the love that I've been looking for. They don't know how to ask for help, and it makes them feel even worse because they can't find the thing that they're looking for. Maybe it's me. So you have an insecure generation that doesn't have coping mechanisms, that wants everything resolved and resolved now. And then we get to the fourth and most egregious of the four observations: environment. We're now taking this wonderful, smart, idealistic, ambitious, hardworking, good group of people that were dealt a bad hand, and we're putting them in corporate environments that do not care about them as human beings, right? We have, for some reason, our work world has changed over the past 20 and 30 years. We are suffering the side effects of business theories left over from the 80s and 90s. And they are bad for people, and they are bad for business. Using someone's livelihood to balance the books, right? It's so normal in America today that we don't even understand how broken and how damaging it is, not only to human beings, but to business. You know, companies talk about how they want to build trust and cooperation, and they announce a round of layoffs. Do you know the quickest way to destroy trust and destroy cooperation in a business, literally in one day? Lay people off, and everyone gets scared. And we're asking our youngest generation to work in environments where how would any of us ever stand up and admit, I made a mistake? We're constantly being told, you have to be vulnerable. Leaders are vulnerable. What does that even mean? It doesn't mean you walk around crying, I'm vulnerable, right? No, what vulnerability means is you create an environment in which someone feels safe enough to raise their hand and said, I don't know what I'm doing. You've given me a job and I haven't been trained to do it. I need help. I made a mistake. I screwed something up. I'm scared. I'm worried. All of these things no one would ever admit inside a company because it puts a target on your head in case there's another round. And so we keep it to ourselves. And how can a company ever do well if nobody's ever willing to admit they made a mistake, that's scared, or they don't know what they're doing? And so we've literally created cultures in which every single day, everybody comes to work and lies, hides, and fakes. And we're asking our youngest generation to work and succeed and find themselves and build their confidence and overcome their addiction to technology and build strong relationships at work. We're asking them to do this, and these are the environments we've created. We keep saying to them, you're the future leaders. We're the leaders now. We're in control. What are we doing? This is what empathy means. It means if there's an entire generation struggling, maybe it's not them. It's like, you know, the only thing that the common factor in all my failed relationships? Me. It's not a generation. It's not them. They're not difficult or hard to understand. They're human beings like the rest of us, trying to find their way, trying to work in a place where they feel that someone cares about them as a human being. By the way, that's what we all want. In other words, it's not even generational. It's all of us. This is the practice of empathy, that if we're struggling to communicate to someone, if we're struggling to help someone be at their natural best, I'm tired of people saying to me, how do I get the best out of my people? Really, that's what you want? They're like a towel, you just wring them. How can I get the most out of them? No, how do I help my people be at their natural best? Right? We're not asking these questions. We are not practicing empathy. We have to start by practicing empathy and relate to what they may be going through. And it will profoundly change the decisions we make. It will profoundly change the way we see the world.